امروز ملت ایران یک ملت صاحب فناوری هسته‌ای است و کسانی که با ملت ما میخوان حرف بزنند باید بدانند که با کدوم ملت دارن حرف میزنند. اگر هم الان ندانند به زودی مجدداً زمانی که سرشون به سنگ خواهد خورد.
From Tehran to the United Nations in New York, President Ahmadinejad expresses his distaste for America and the international community. Media outlets line up for interviews with a defiant Iranian president, as Daily News reports focus on Iran's nuclear program. American and Western leaders have often labeled the Iranian regime a sponsor of terror and a violator of human rights. Yet, for more than 30 years, America has misread the guiding principles of the Islamic Republic. What happens when a regime that openly desires the destruction of nations obtains nuclear weapons? The world may suffer unthinkable consequences. Iran's nuclear program is not an isolated problem. It is the final component of an extreme doctrine that has held Iran's citizens and the international community hostage for more than 30 years. The threat America and the world face from Iran today can be traced back to 1978. At the time, Iran was ruled by the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, a longtime ally of the United States.
Iran is an island of stability in one of the more troubled areas of the world.
The Shah was rapidly modernizing Iran, introducing secularism and capitalism to a traditional Muslim society.
There always is this tug of war in the Middle East between authenticity and what you might call cultural collaboration with the West.
Within Iran, the Shah was viewed as an uncompromising dictator. Growing distaste quickly turned into public outrage. Rightists and leftists from all across Iranian society, including Marxists, communists, and religious elements, formed a popular revolution to overthrow the Shah, and one man emerged as the leader of the movement. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, living in exile in the suburbs of Paris, had been one of the main opponents of the Shah since the 1960s, and offered promises of political freedom.
Khomeini was able to ride this wave of, an enormous dissatisfaction, frustration, and expectation.
They had no idea who he was, but when they began to see that he had power, they naturally began to gravitate towards him.
After months of violent street protests, the U.S. withdrew its support of the Shah.
Now we know the United States has passed the word to the Shah of Iran. It's time for him to leave his country.
The fact that Jimmy Carter did not support the Shah in the time of his difficulties actually signaled to the Iranian people that the Shah's rule was over.
In February 1979, the Shah left Iran, never to return. 2 weeks later, Khomeini triumphantly arrived in Tehran as a hero. For Khomeini, the Shah was gone, But the Western influence he promoted was still present across Iranian society.
بعداگون یه چیزی خیال میکنن که در غرب خبری است بدانن که در غرب خبری نیست جز جنایت.
America would soon become Khomeini's next adversary.
In their perception, the leading power of the world of the unbelievers is the United States. And the United States is therefore inevitably the main enemy.
America is the great Satan because, from their point of view, it is the enemy of God. We are Satan whispering into the ears of the Muslims, trying to tempt them away from Islam.
For years during our school in Iran, our teachers and the government, they told us the Americans are devils, they will kill us. Every morning they forced us to just chant death to America.
It didn't take long for the regime to discover a model for fighting against American interests.
The U.S. Embassy in Tehran has been invaded and occupied by Iranian students. The Americans inside have been taken prisoner.
Just 9 months after Khomeini's return, several hundred students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 63 Americans hostage.
شما می‌بینید که الان مرکز فساد امریکا را جوان‌ها رفتن گرفتن و امریکایی هم که در اونجا بوده گرفتن و اون لانه فساد را به دست آوردن و امریکا هم هیچ غلطی نمی‌تونه کنه.
The first major American mistake was in the handling of the hostage crisis. At that time, the response was, to put it mildly, feeble.
Everything that Carter did showed to the Iranian mind's weakness. They said, oh boy, America's weak. Let's push on.
I don't know how much longer we can sit here and see them kept captive while the situation around them does deteriorate.
ما از دخالت نظامی نمی‌ترسیم. اون چیزی که ما را می‌ترساند وابستگی فرهنگی است.
The crisis stretched on for 444 days, emboldening Khomeini and further strengthening his popular support. The hostages were not released until January 20th, 1981.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
Khomeini understood that Ronald Reagan would be a different kind of a president than Jimmy Carter had been. There probably was a measure of wariness about his approach to Iran and an understanding that he would not put up with the assault on American sovereignty that Jimmy Carter had put up with.
Some 30 minutes ago, the planes bearing our prisoners left Iranian airspace and are now free.
At the time of the revolution, most Iranians and Westerners alike didn't fully understand Khomeini's guiding principles and the vision he had in store for Iran and the world.
Khomeini was seeking what he called an Islamic revolution to establish the rule of Iran and the world as a whole.
His goal was to eradicate the old regime and replace it with a pure Islamic regime.
و ما که نهضت کردیم برای اسلام نهضت کردیم. جمهوری اسلامی است.
Iranians, by a reported 60-1 margin, have approved a referendum creating an Islamic state and giving Ayatollah Khomeini undisputed powers as theocratic leader for life.
Most of the states in the Muslim world, those that have written constitutions, say something about Islam being the religion of the state or the Sharia being a part of the system of law. In Iran, it goes much beyond that.
باید این قانون اساسی ما مطابق با شرع در چارچوب شرع.
The constitution Khomeini canonized guides Iran's leaders to this day.
نهضت برای اسلام نمیتوند محصور باشد در یک کشور و نمیتوند محصور باشد در حتی کشورهای اسلامی.
اسلام برای شما خوب است، برای دنیاتون خوب است. اگر آخرت هم قبول ندارید برای دنیاتون خوب است.
It has nothing to do with nationalism, with the people of Iran, with Iran as a country, with none of those things. It's the ideology of Islamism, period.
For over 30 years, the regime has used international terror in its struggle to spread Khomeini's revolution.
When you look at Iranian government terrorism, what you understand is that from the very beginning of this regime, in January of 1979, they considered terrorism as a tool of policy.
We know that Iran is the leading sponsor and supporter of terrorism around the world.
The Iranian regime has an endless number of proxy organizations, beginning with the big ones, such as Hezbollah.
Iran set up Hezbollah early on to have a cutout, somebody who could independently